This topic came about because in attending the Extension PDB conference in October in Moab, there were many, many new faces. I don't know the exact total of our new colleagues within Extension within the last couple of years, but it's large. But anyway, and it became pretty clear at that conference that we don't really know the background or interests of our new colleagues. And a lot of them don't know our backgrounds and interests and the types of programming that we're working on. And so, and in another conversation, someone was talking about, hoping to find some information or work with a specialist on a particular topic, but they didn't know who to contact and those types of things. So, in talking with Dean White and some others, I thought that I would put on this particular workshop for you all. So I think in really trying to think about talking to people about what we do, it's not always easy. I know when I've had family members ask me, what does an economist do? Or specifically, what does an ag economist do? That's not always a straightforward thing that we can say about that. Also, I've had people ask me, so what is it that you do that's different from, say, Ruby Ward or Ryan Larson? That's an excellent question. Also, when I tell people that I study human behavior, often they'll say something like, or ask something like, well, how does that difference than from a sociologist or psychiatrist and something like that. So anyway, so we're going to talk about this today, on how to kind of communicate what we do, and how our programs have value, and why we're the person to be working on those programs. So I hope that at the end of today that you will have learned to communicate more effectively, or at least have a start on setting forth, being able to talk about what you do, your background, what your extension programs do, or if you do a lot of applied research, what the point is of those research programs, and how they help and provide solutions to problems that we have in Utah. And we are going to do some of that through the use of creating a 1-minute elevator pitch. So before I got a PhD, I was a financial advisor, stockbroker in the Seattle area for several years, 4 years. And then I became a corporate trainer for a large finance company, and I did that for several years. And like the cornerstone of any sales training is what's called the elevator pitch or elevator speech. Okay. And I was thinking about preparing this presentation on how to kind of promote or advertise what we do effectively. I started looking around at ways, simple tools that I could give you to do that. And I was actually surprised about how much discussion there is on this idea of elevator pitch and elevator speeches within academics, both for research type situations in faculty and also in extension. And I'll actually show you some extension examples here in a minute. Another thing that I want to talk about, because I think that especially with all of the new faculty hires we've had in the counties, is really what is the role of an extension specialist, so more of a campus-based, if you will, extension person, and how can you work with them and use their expertise and their assistance in your local extension efforts. Although what I'm going to talk about there goes both ways. So also recognizing with the interests of other county level folks, and then how we can help them as extension specialists. So those are the things I'm going to go over today. Again, the end goal is to provide tools so that we can more effectively communicate about what we do and how we can help each other. Okay. So again, I wanted to look at a tool. And so I'm going to use this idea of a 1-minute, or sometimes it's called a 60-second elevator speech or pitch. Some of those of you who have had some background training in sales or marketing may have heard these before. You may have used them, but I will briefly go over what is an elevator pitch, what's the goal, what questions do we want to answer in our elevator pitches, how do we create them, and then practice. So we'll do a little bit of practice there. All right. So what is an elevator pitch? It is a concise statement without much jargon, if any, about your extension programming and the experience and expertise that you have that you would share most likely informally in various professional situations. So more so in conversations. So we might use one in a brief discussion or introduction with an extension colleague at a conference or a meeting, in the hallway, that type of thing. We might use it in introducing ourselves, the table at the start of a meeting or seminar, that type of thing. We might use it to introduce ourselves to an extension client, someone attending an extension program in the hallway before the workshop, that type of thing. And probably importantly, we might want to use it in a conversation with stakeholders, county commissioners, legislators that we may run into on the things that we're doing and working on. So that's where we might see them most often used. What is the goal of this elevator pitch? Well, I would say at a minimum is obviously to create a memorable, positive interaction with the person that you're speaking with, possibly to open the door with further conversation, or for us an extension, maybe to work together in the future on a project, on a program, on a grant application, just to have interest and understand more of what we're doing. At best, or the end goal is really to communicate the value and the impact of our extension programs or our applied research programs, and the expertise and background that we have that makes us the best person to address these problems and issues. So essentially, we're learning to market ourselves and our programs and to be very straightforward about the value that they provide. So what do we normally have in an elevator pitch? Okay. What is the topic of our extension program applied research? So overall topic, for instance, I could say I do ag marketing, so ag and food product marketing. What is the problem or issue or question that your program addresses or your research addresses? So what is the situation that's going on that you've identified perhaps through either a formal needs assessment or an informal needs assessment with current perhaps extension clientele? What is the problem or issue interesting and important? So what is the so what? You know, who has this issue? Why is it important? Why should we address it? Again, a lot of that information it can come from your needs assessment. Who are you? And why are you the person to address this issue? What is your background? What uniqueness do you bring to the table? A lot of times in the elevator speech literature, you'll see that, why are you different? Okay. And that's, for you to put that there. And then finally, what does your program or research do to address the problem or issue? Okay. Or how does it advance a discussion on what the issue is? And so this is basically the questions that we want to answer within the elevator pitch. And please feel free to speak up if you have any questions if I've gone along. Creating an elevator pitch. So first of all, your audience and who you're speaking to is very important. Your pitch may be slightly different, or you may emphasize certain things depending on who it's focused on. So what's important to the person you're speaking to? What is their goal in speaking with you? You might have a slightly different pitch for someone that is already in extension or a colleague in extension versus someone who is outside the university system or who is a legislator. Okay, you may have slightly different versions. Define the question or topic that you're going to answer. Start with an action phrase or hook. In other words, get their attention, perhaps start by it. And I'll show you some examples of what action phrases are in a minute. State who you are and how your background relates to the topic or question at hand. Perhaps share a few highlights or a story, additional details, and then discuss the solution that your program brings and the value and benefit and who it benefits. Okay. Obviously, it's important when delivering the pitch as well. And again, I'll bring this from some of the sales literature, important to make eye contact. So have one-on-one eye contact with the person you're speaking to. And so as you can see, these types of communications are for one-on-one. Okay, they're not necessarily to be made in a group context. Demonstrate enthusiasm Okay, obviously, we spend a lot of time doing what we do, whether it's our programs, our research, or both. So hopefully we're very enthusiastic about them and we want to talk about them. Try not to get distracted by other people or things going on in the area. Try to keep your attention on the person that you're speaking to. And then it's important to have your pitch down cold, to have it rehearsed, to know what you want to say. And again, keeping any jargon or specific things that you would use within your discipline that other people might not know. I mean, I would say this for, any presentation, any speech. Obviously using plain English is best. There may be times when you're doing a presentation or talking to an informed audience that you might want to use, some of the nomenclature from your discipline. But again, usually plain English is best. And so these are kind of the 4 things of elevator pitches here in the graphic: short, personalized, interesting, confidence, not arrogance, but confidence. Some action words to consider. For example, you might say, I apply this technique, okay, to perhaps increasing the length of the growing season for cut flowers in northern Utah. Okay, as an example, or I construct greenhouses so that we can have a longer sales season, or I evaluate programming within extension. Okay, these action words create an expectation. The listener will be waiting for you to tell them what is it you're doing. They'll be waiting for you to finish your sentence because they'll be basically hooked or motivated by your action words. So here's some examples. These are really what I would call straightforward examples. They're maybe not complete in some ways, but these are ones that I found within the extension area. So these come from Iowa State University and from K-State University. Not to put down what we're doing at Utah State University, but just some examples. So I like this first one. It's food and the environment. So I work in food economics, food systems. So maybe that's why it's of interest to me. But anyway, it says Iowa State University Extension outreach programs like this one, or maybe a better description, focus on local actions to produce a safe, sustainable, accessible, and affordable food supply to reduce food insecurity of Iowa families. Locally grown foods have the added benefit of, continue the sentence. The thing about this one and the one under it, they're good, but they're more about what extension programs do in general. They're not necessarily focused on the I or the we in terms of what the extension professional does. So again, these are examples. They're maybe not perfect, but they are examples. The second one, youth outreach, extension outreach programs like this program build leadership, citizenships, communication, and life skills in Iowa youth so they can reach their full potential. Youth get excited about learning, discovering new careers when, finish the sentence, okay. This next one, I'm not going to read all of these, but this has actually where you insert your own name and your own type of thing. But you say, hello, my name is Kynda. I work with USU Extension, the local office of USU Extension and research. And I work with families to help improve essential life skills such as healthy relationships, healthy living choices, financial well-being, strong leaders, strong communities. Okay, so you can see that these, especially those that are more related to extension programs in general, they actually kind of look like mission statements. Okay, they kind of look like things you would see that a business would write. And we kind of see that within these small 2 to 3 sentence elevator speeches. They kind of look like that. I'm encouraging you to think about your program specifically and your background as part of this seminar. So I have a couple more examples from more general and I like this one because it's data focused elevator pitch. I mean, we deal with a lot of data within academics, and so I think this one will come through. So the first thing is to state the problem. The average home wastes half of the energy that flows through it. For context, the amount of energy wasted in just one day by California and Texas alone equates to how much was wasted by the 2010 BP oil spill. Okay, that's quite an interesting statement. That's the hook, right? That's really like, wow, that's a lot. Even though we don't know the exact amounts, either for the amount of energy wasted or how much oil went in to the ocean in the 2010 oil spill. It's definitely, it piques our interest. The solution is this particular product or company called Energy Saver, has helped over 3,000 people save money on the utility bills, reduce their carbon footprint, and make the world a healthier place. Okay, so that is a solution being provided through, in our case, we would say our extension program. By incorporating your unique lifestyle and budget into our assessments and then providing 24/7 monitoring, our clients save on average $3,000 more per year than those who use other devices. So again, this is the solution and the benefit. And then you'll see a lot of times within elevator speeches and that there's this call to action, the CTA, call to action. So my only question for you is, what are you going to do with the extra 3,000? What a nice vacation. Okay. I don't know that the call to action is necessary for all situations. You might use it when you're looking to perhaps develop a relationship with another colleague, work on a program together, or bring in perhaps producers or other clientele to work on a solution together, those types of things. But it's not necessarily always used. This one's called the fear-based elevators, which I don't know that we would use this tactic very much within extension programming, perhaps, but I won't go into detail here. But as you can see, it has to do with spinal misalignment and health issues. So for those of you who work within the health field, you may be able to use this, for some insights. But I think I'm going to skip this one for now. Okay. Before we get into practicing, what questions you guys have, or has anyone used an elevator pitch of this style before? Is this new? Is this something that you all already work on? Anyone?
Well, I think I've I don't know if I've used them, but I've heard other people use them, and it's not. It should be my personality, but it's not, and I could do a better job of having something. Does that make sense, Kynda? I mean,
Yeah, totally.
It's not intuitive to me, and in fact, sometimes it seems a little braggadocious, like what are you going to do with that $3,000? Be a nice vacation.
Right. Well, that was that example. That was
too cheeky for me,
Yeah.
Anyway,
and that example isn't perfect for what we do. I agree with you that having one of these and being able to express yourself clearly is something that seems that you would be good at, Carrie. And I could say that having been in sales and marketing for a long time, and it's also something that I need to perfect better, because I got asked many times actually at the PDP conference in Moab what I do and what that means. And I think in some cases they probably got a good answer. In others, they were probably still scratching their head when they walked away. So that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I think it would be awesome if we all had just a few sentences about what we do and why it's important that we can use, when it arises.
I was going to say, at my previous university, students were required to do 30-second speeches as part of their internship courses. Like when they did the online, the online kind of reflection on what they're learning in their internships, one of their assignments was to create a 30-second. They did 30 seconds instead of 60 seconds, but kind of their elevator pitch. And so I've had a little experience with it. One of my questions is,
great, Bruce. Go ahead.
Be more assertive, like you've kind of said to personalize it or adjust it to the need, but my feeling is that maybe I should be more assertive in using it sometimes, but also kind of like Carrie said, it might come across as being, if you use it too often, as being kind of, you think a lot of yourself. So any kind of thoughts on how often to use it?
I think the on that one example, the end, what are you going to do with the 3,000 you save, is what he was objecting to more than the elevator speech in general. I could be wrong, Carrie. You can correct me if that's the case. I would say that, having 3 or 4 sentences to talk about who you are that you can use and amend for your audience, but you have those easily in your brain is what we're talking about. Boasting about what you do, that's not really what I'm getting at. Although I would say, in general, I think we underrate what we do and how important our work is more than we overrate generally. Not all academics, of course, fall into that category. So I don't think it's a bad thing to at least have some information on how your programs have impacted your clientele. Looks like Brian would like to talk. Brian, you can go ahead and talk. You don't need to put your hand up.
Oh, I was just gonna say really quick, first of all, I'm really glad that you're doing this. I've gone through this exercise several times, and for me, honestly, the most helpful part of it is just helping me think through all the things that I want to do or could promote, what really are, the most important, or what are my priorities. And
Right.
it's not that those other things aren't important, but if I only have somebody's attention for, an elevator ride, or for a few more minutes, what really should hit home. And it's hard to make that decision in the elevator. And so if you can, go through these exercises that Kynda's, recommending now, you may never end up getting this speech as is, but if you have that opportunity, it's already here in your head.
Yeah. And that's the main thing, is to have 3 or 4 sentences. And Bruce mentioned 30 seconds. I know I've seen recommended up to 2 minutes, usually, 30 to 90 seconds. And I agree with Brian in that understanding what you do and what's important to you is maybe more important than being able to communicate it properly. Yeah, Roz.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what you've already said, that it is extremely important. And I just want to also add that for state specialists, and likely many at the county levels as well, we're running numerous programs. So to have an overall easy, relatable statement about all of your programming is extremely important. And also being able to parcel that out as you get more practice on this over time into each of your specific programming, depending on who you're talking to be able to clearly and easily just communicate the so what and why what you're doing is having an impact.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Roz. Yes, I was going to mention that as well. For many of us, we have multiple programs. Some are related, some are not. Just depends on the situation. Sometimes we have programs because that was the grant funding that was available, right? We'll just be honest. But yes, having an elevator pitch, if you will, for individual programs could also be very, very useful and helpful. Overall, though, I would say start by working on your role and extension in general. And then as you get good at that, maybe looking at separating out a separate pitch for individualized programs, especially if they do not overlap. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of practice, right? The extension program, we're going to practice. So I would like you to take about 5 minutes and we'll actually pause to just briefly sketch out on paper your elevator pitch. And again, I would like to, at this point, think about it in the big picture. So your extension position and maybe your role within that, or a primary program. And again, remember to think about what the problem is, why it's a problem. So the hook, so bring the listener into being interested. What makes you qualified, or what do you bring to the table in terms of solving the problem? How does your program approach the solution? And then what's the benefit or value? So I have 12:25. So at 12:30, we will come back. And I would like a couple of people to volunteer to give their elevator speech or pitch. That would be great. You don't have to, but if I could get a couple of you, or at least one of you, to do that. So we will break for 5 minutes. See you in 5 minutes. Maybe I should pick on Carrie.
I can if you want.
Okay, thank you, Bruce.
I'm Bruce Richards. I'm Dairy Extension Specialist. I build leadership, communication, and teamwork skills in dairy farm managers. I also provide scientific information to help them make management decisions regarding health, nutrition, milk production, and reproduction on their dairy farms. The experience I had growing up on a dairy farm in various leadership positions and in teaching animal nutrition and dairy science courses for more than 10 years have helped. I wasn't quite done when I finished, have helped get me ready for this position or something like that.
Yeah, no, perfect. Great job. For those of us listening, any feedback for Bruce on what stuck out to you, what you found intriguing, if you were confused at any point, or what he might emphasize more or less?
I like that he added in his leadership experience. So not just demonstrating content knowledge, but ability to use that. I think that's important.
Great, thank you. Bruce, one thing I would add is that, what you say is the types of programming that you're doing, I'm sure it's important, but maybe the one hook or the catch on why maybe something that's going on within the dairy industry might be something you could add, or like in general, if there's an ongoing need within the dairy industry, maybe just to catch my interest, like, oh, that's going on, I didn't know that. Oh, I'm glad that you're solving that. You know what I mean?
Very good.
That might be the one thing that I would add to that. I'm an optimist. I'm going to take for granted what you're doing is important, but not everyone is necessarily that way. Especially funding agencies and government officials and those types of things. They might want to know why.
Right.
But thank you for volunteering. Appreciate it, and great job.
You bet.
Anybody else? What's that, Bruce?
Thank you for the feedback.
Oh yeah, no problem. Anybody else?
So I'll be brave because I want the feedback.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
And I have to say, I'm having trouble with why I'm the right person, and mine is not completed. But
Okay, no worries.
I'll just throw it out there, and it's longer than 2 or 3 sentences. Whatever. Okay, so my name is Cindy Nelson, and I work for USU Extension. My focus areas are health and wellness and positive youth development. I serve in Beaver County, a rural, underserved community that lacks resources and educational options. My 4-H Friday Region Ambassador and Try 4-H Adventure programs help youth build leadership skills, improve citizenship, learn life skills so they can reach their full potential. Youth who are involved in 4-H are more likely to, and I haven't finished that sentence.
Okay.
I also recruit, train, and utilize volunteer leaders to expand the reach of educational programming. I also address health and wellness by providing physical activities, outdoor experiences, healthy relationship, education, and chronic disease prevention opportunities throughout the lifespan.
Awesome. One recommendation is you have several things you mentioned. You might do a different set or a different pitch for different programming. Just as an aside, because it is a little bit long. The lack of educational opportunities in rural areas, that was you brought me in on that one. So good job there on the hook. Another thing that I think at least I'm aware of through my background is the idea of food deserts and nutritional options. And you might mention something that as a hook for those types of programs that you're doing within the health and wellness. So, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think that what you have, and even though it's a little long, would work really well in county commissioner meetings, where you give them a little more detail. But you don't want to go on with a PowerPoint for 25 minutes kind of thing. You know what I mean? But for like when we sat together in Moab and I said, what do you do, Cindy? About a half of that would have been great. So thank you.
Yeah. So I'm meeting with my commissioners next week, and I need
good. Okay.
I need a little intro before we do the 25-minute PowerPoint.
Right. Well, you got it. You're almost there. You got it. I see Roz's smiling happy face. Are you willing to,
Yeah, it took me a
Give it
few
her your
minutes, so I didn't volunteer right away because it is complicated, right? I have 4 different statewide programs and then work at the national level and how to kind of tie that up in a neat package. So here's my stab. The acceleration of climate change and its impacts is spurring rapidly growing demand for sustainable community-led climate resilience strategies. So as a sustainable communities extension specialist, I work at the interface between the federal government and institutions of higher education to advance climate change programming and extension nationwide. And honing in on the state level, my state programs range from ecological design to increasing accessibility of Utah farmers markets. And all of my state programs are designed to increase our climate resilience through addressing greenhouse gas sources and sinks.
I'd hire you, Rosalind.
Yeah, feedback for Roz. I'm biased. I was recently on her promotion committee. So I know a lot about Roz, and so it's hard to get rid of that. So I'm going to let everybody else provide some feedback.
So Roz, I know I've talked to you, we've been involved on various things, so I have a small idea about how broad reaching your programs are. So I thought you did a pretty good job of getting everything kind of funneled together to have kind of cohesive force. That's where I'm struggling.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this. And as Kynda just mentioned, I did have to really critically think about this as I just went up for promotion. In fact, in this activity, I pulled up my self-assessment letter to refresh my memory. But I will just add the caveat that climate change, it's widely now known, the science behind it, especially anthropogenic climate change. And yet we are still walking the delicate walk at the county level of how to communicate that in a way that doesn't turn our audiences off. So likely if I was in an elevator with a county commissioner or a city council member, depending on who it is, I would probably change my pitch slightly with the same message, but from climate change resilience to community resilience, and still get the point across without turning the audience away. I think a lot about communications, as Kynda and I have the similar vein of focusing on that human dimension side of our work.
Yes, and the word usage can make all the difference, as you pointed out. Yeah, hard to have community resilience if we do not have climate stability. Unfortunately, Moab learned that last fall with all of the unfortunate destruction that was done by the floods and the resulting movement of ground, of tierra around. Anyway, which I saw firsthand when I was there not too long afterwards. But anyway, the side issue. That's actually one of the, the delivery instructions was to not get off track, and I'd let myself do that too much. So I'm doing that right now. Anyway, well, thanks everyone. I think I will move on to talking about kind of the role of state specialists, which was, I think, very informative for me as well, looking at this, and how both other specialists and county faculty can take advantage of the resources that state specialists provide. So I know some people are brand new to extension. They've been with us maybe 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. So I was going to briefly go over, what is an extension specialist and what do they do? Then talk a little bit about how the expertise of the extension specialists can be incorporated into local, so perhaps county or regional level extension programming. But again, goes both ways. So I want to emphasize that it's also important to understand what county faculty are interested in, what their needs are, and reach out to them. So it works both ways. Thirdly, how do we find extension specialists to work with? So we'll go over each of these. The first one, I found actually a publication by the University of California, so you'll have to excuse that choice, but that had an excellent overview of what an extension, cooperative extension specialist is. And so I just pulled some bullet points from that particular publication. So this is not my own, but I agree wholeheartedly. So I don't know that I want to read these in depth, but basically our goals, extension specialists at the state level, are to take research that we and others do and bring it, out to the communities, and help solve problems for people in communities within Utah. So extension specialists have applied research and educational programmings tailored to what the needs are of people within the state. And they develop relationships with other colleagues, with stakeholders, with policymakers, public agencies, nonprofits, to tailor this programming. What extension specialists do a lot is to connect campus faculty who perhaps do not have an extension appointment with county-based faculty, so that knowledge can be taken to the county level to address specific problems going on within that county or area, and also provide leadership and technical information to all of the stakeholders and clientele, which would be county-based faculty, clientele, legislators. Okay. State specialists, while normally located on main campus in academic departments, there are some exceptions. Rosalind, who's here, is one exception. She is within a department, but she is on the Moab campus. There are others, not just Ross. And extension specialists are expected to provide leadership and support program teams, initiatives, work groups. So often when something rather sudden or rather important comes up, and I wouldn't necessarily say that the drought affecting the Great Salt Lake is that sudden, but it is something that did take primary stage within the last year. Okay, it would be common for extension specialists working in that area to start a program team that includes people within extension within the university, and as well as stakeholders and policymakers. They work closely with other extension faculty, and they bring leadership, visibility, and collaboration to research and extension efforts. And finally, often the activities of extension specialists are conducted with interdisciplinary teams across several groups. And so I think these 8 bullet points provide a really good description in general of what extension specialists do and what their role is. The second thing here is, how can I incorporate the expertise of extension specialists into county level or regional level programming? And thanks, Roz. Yes, Nikki Frey, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She is at the Cedar City campus. So typical models of extension specialist county faculty interaction. Okay, first of all, I want to say this is not the only ways of doing things, but these are primary ways that I've seen that county and campus-based faculty have worked together primarily in the past. So I have basically 5 suggestions here, but if you have other examples, especially if you think they should be discussed, please bring them up. So the first one is county-based faculty or other extension specialists can reach out to a specialist for materials or resources. For instance, I have often gotten the question, what is community-supported agriculture? What does it look like? How can I learn more? What resources are available? Okay, so that's one example. So someone calls me or emails me and asks me those questions, and then I can provide input. The second one is to invite an extension specialist to discuss and present on a topic locally. Okay, that's another thing that happens quite often. For instance, if there are people interested in looking at grass-fed beef production and sales, I've been asked to come out to the county to do a presentation for 4 or 5 or 6, 10 ranchers on what those opportunities are and what that type of business looks like, what the marketing realities are. So for instance, local growers are interested in offering agritourism opportunities. Can you put a workshop on for them in my county? Okay, that's also something that I have been asked in the past. The third thing is work together to create a project team to address an issue or problem. Okay, this is a larger scope where you might put together a project group and have stakeholder meetings, apply for grants together, do curriculum development together. The specialists might provide project management or a grant financial management. Okay, this is again bigger scope, but happens a lot. The fourth thing is to seek out an extension specialist for educational, professional development and training. You probably noticed that I've been a part of a group where we've been doing workshops for county-based faculty across the West on how to do business feasibility assessment. So that is one example. Another one is here's, I would like to learn how to grow cut flowers in high tunnels. Can you provide training and instruction? So that's something obviously that they might reach out to Melanie Stock for, who is our small farm specialist who's been working on cut flowers, for example. And the final thing I have is to provide local programming support and collaboration for extension specialist programming. So this is a situation where the extension specialist has developed a program and the area or county faculty member says, oh, I'd love to have that program here. Can you offer it? And so they would say, I'd like to offer your program here in my area. Please consider offering it here and include me on your program planning and or funding. So this happens a lot as well. So these are the kind of the 5 main areas that I've seen more often. Does anybody have any other examples that they'd like to provide on how county faculty and extension specialists have worked together?
Well, I might be talking quite a bit, but I'll just say this one thing. Steve Price mentioned that we're working together. We partnered on a USDA grant application that was funded, Farmers Market Promotion Program grant. Now him and I are serving on a search committee to hire a director, and we'll be moving forward to pursue that project together. So that's a depth example, but it is an advantage as a state specialist that we have is we can use some of our time and are expected to be submitting these larger grants periodically. And so pulling in county level educators to help with that is extremely beneficial all around, both for their own promotion and tenure, but also for us reaching out and collaborating in a depth manner across the state.
Yeah, exactly. So that falls under the category 3 there, was to work on a large project together. I think, and Raj, you pointed out something really important in that many state specialists have experience and are often quite good at writing grants and submitting grants. And so for county faculty who are looking for funding to put on a particular program or to do some research, reaching out to a state specialist to work on that program, or even to provide professional development on grant writing, specifically on grant writing, is a great way to use the resources available through the extension specialist. I know Ruby Ward and I, my colleague, we've been asked to provide professional development on program evaluation, impact evaluation before, and that's not specific to our research areas or our background in economics. It's just specific to having been in extension for a long period of time. Also, I've been asked to review and help people do R&Rs on their research articles. I've been asked to help people think about promoting their programs, and again, those are extension related skills that don't have a lot to do with my specific programs. But again, that's what specialists are here for, is to help across a wide variety of areas. Any other examples? Okay, great, thank you. Okay. So the final thing is, how do I find an extension specialist to work with? And I think this is, so the fine art to this, I'm going to be honest with you. I think that one thing that we do have, though, is we have this directory of specialists, and I just want to show that to you real quick. So I'm going to share that with you. It's pretty general, but it does have some basics. And you can see it's alphabetical. It has everybody's picture. But for instance, for Brent Black, he's the tree fruit specialist. So anything related to tree fruits, he's a good person to start with. Carrie Durwood does nutrition work. Matt Garcia is our beef specialist, and anything related to beef production, that type of thing. I have to see what's listed for me here. Again, it's pretty general, but you can go here and you can find out quite a bit about the basics. I'm just gonna see. So like Nikki, who I mentioned earlier, she's in Cedar City. She's a wildland resources, wildlife specialist. Here it says agriculture and food marketing specialist. So it doesn't talk a lot about stuff, for instance, I do with consumers, direct marketing. But again, this is a place you can at least look to start if you don't have a lot of ideas about who's available and what their background is. We also have a directory of all extension, and there is some information there as well. I'm not going to pull it up, but this actually has everyone in extension. So a regional level, county level, state level. And so that's another resource. The third suggestion here, and I think is probably where I would start, and I've even used this suggestion, is to discuss the programming need that you have with your department head. So that, an extension that would currently be Justin or Heidi, and see if they have suggestions for people, for specialists that would be a good place to start to work with. I know I was looking for county faculty recently interested in specific topics, and I reached out to Justin and he knew of a couple, but then he said, well, there might be others. So he sent out a blanket email to everyone in the Ag NR department within the county level. So that was very helpful to me in finding county faculty interested in the topic I was looking at. And then fourth, maybe reach out to other extension faculty for suggestions. I have no problem with people emailing me or calling me and say, hey, Kynda, I need to do this. Who should I call? If I don't know the answer, I can ask around as well. I will say that we are very, very lucky in that we have, I think it's close to 70 extension specialists. And I don't know the exact numbers for the number of county faculty, but we have an amazing number of people doing a lot of different work. And so there's a lot of resources out there. At the former university I was at, we had maybe 15 state specialists. So it's a lot less assistance and help there. Okay. So I think for all extension faculty, whether you're at the county level, area level, state level, when you are meeting a new colleague or communicating with someone that you haven't before, ask them, what is your elevator pitch? And maybe you don't have to call it that, but what is it you do? What is it that your programs do? Can you just fill me in quickly? And find out about what their background is, what their expertise is, what are their program and research interests, and then what are the primary needs of their stakeholders, whether it be statewide stakeholders or by county. Okay, invest a little time in understanding what they do and why they do what they do.